I met Bobby in 1960 at a college dance. I was a third year college student, and he was invited by a common friend who met him in the United States. And Bobby was assigned at Sangley Point in the Philippines. So I did not even like him in the beginning because I thought he was, you know, a little cocky. And but he was a very good dancer. And so after that, I saw him a couple more times, and we became good friends. When he was growing up, it was very difficult, and he had to go. I think it took about an hour to go to school, and sometimes he has to walk that hour if he missed they call it the tram. I think it was called the tram. He of course wanted to go to certain schools, but he found that he cannot because no, he is not able to go because he's, what do you call, black, okay? And he said, I would have wanted to become a doctor, but at that time, we cannot afford it, and nobody's going to accept me as a doctor, you know, because of my background, my ethnic background. He never knew that he was going to be in the military because his career was, well, I guess I'm going to be a teacher. But he liked the job, but he was very difficult to teach the kids because he was assigned in places where, I guess it's like the ghetto or something, and trying to reach for those kids who are very poor, are hungry, and sometimes they are out of control. It made him so frustrated, and he said, what else can I do? And for some reason, there was a chance for him to go, and he became an ensign, and he went to school at the Naval Academy. And from there, he was able to go to the Coast Guard. About 3 or 4 years after Bobby was in the Coast Guard and he was stationed in Sangley Point, he was called back to Washington, D.C., although his tour of duty in the Philippines was not over because I guess President Kennedy had asked, why is it that there are very few minorities in some of the services, especially the Coast Guard? Why are there no minorities? And he wanted something done about it, and so Bobby was called and he started recruiting. He went to colleges and different places to speak about the minority in the service in the Coast Guard and what are the opportunities. So he became a mentor to many young men and women, and most of them I had not known. He would talk about 1 or 2 people that he had mentored and helped over the years. Some of them I like Admiral Errol Brown.
I was a cadet at the Coast Guard Academy. I attended the Coast Guard Academy from 1968 to 1972. That was an interesting time to be at the Coast Guard Academy. There weren't a lot of minorities. In my class, and of course we had some challenges. The whole experience of going through a military service academy is quite challenging in of itself. Being a minority brought with it some additional challenges. But I remember very distinctly, it was one evening we had been asked to have all the minority cadets gather in a room in one of the halls to meet with a Coast Guard officer. As a cadet, an officer is a rarity, and it's very important. And that was pretty profound experience to have this officer walk in. And he was a black officer, and until that point I frankly had not seen a black officer. And he was in khakis. I remember very distinctly he had his uniform on, he had his ribbons, and I was very, very impressed. And he laid his hat down on the desk, and I remember looking at the gold band, the eagle, and the whole presence, and his uniform was really, really impressive. And what he did was he asked us all to just take a seat and relax, and he wanted to talk with us. And he had a message for us, that changed my life. And it was a very, very simple message. It was what he expected of us as minorities, because going into the service we would represent more than just the Coast Guard as officers. We'd represent minorities at large, and we would be watched very closely, and everything we did would matter. And to have gone through what he went through 15 years earlier, in terms of probably being the only one in his class, only one at the Pensacola getting his wings, and just every place he's going, at the air station as an ops officer, being the only black, and knowing that all the eyes are upon him, knowing that he has little to no margin for error. I mean, I think that's absolutely incredible.
Well, I'm William Pickram. I'm the graduate of the U.S. Coast Guard Academy and also the second African American pilot in the Coast Guard. Captain Bobby Wilks was a pioneer and had many, many firsts. He was the first black pilot in the Coast Guard. He was the first African American to ever be a commanding officer of the Coast Guard Air Station. He was the first African American to reach the rank of captain, which is very, very unique in and of itself, because the Coast Guard, as small a service as it is, has very, very few captains, and for him to reach that pinnacle in his career is really a very great testament to his professionalism and the type of person he was, not only as a Coast Guard officer, but as a human being.
I would think of him in the sense of his professionalism, at least as I knew him. His professional demeanor always, when in his job, and like so many law enforcement agencies, your job is just not a 9 to 5, it's a 24-hour day type responsibility. He was always direct. He was excellent at basically mediating situations, could be decisive when he had to be, but always with kind of a grin and a twinkle. He sought to be at the leading edge of things as they were happening. He flew helicopters, and in his later life was very active with the FAA, evaluating new helicopters to prove that they were airworthy.
Captain Wilks was a great inspiration to me. He was, back then in 1977 when I was commissioned, there were very few minority officers in the Coast Guard, let alone a captain, a senior officer. And I remember seeing him for the first time, and that made me realize that I could have a long-term career in the Coast Guard. And once you see a person like Captain Wilks and a whole generation ahead of you, and imagine some of the things he had to do, and some of the things that had to be done by him, the forward, and he kind of paved the way for us. And I think he did it with incredible professionalism. As we know, he was, just by reading some of the stories, the true stories of what he did in rescues, he was a great aviator, just a fantastic aviator, a great leader also. And I kind of think if I would say anything about myself, you try to be like people that you have been mentored by.
When he was dying, or with the time when he knew that it was almost like he was going to die. And I will tell him, do not worry, Bobby, now you're going to be perfect. Now you can be like Captain Kirk and fly out into all the other places in the universe. Because that's what he told me whenever he was watching Star Trek. I wish I could be like Captain Kirk. have my own ship and go all over the universe.
He's a remarkable person, and how nice to have this type of person as a very special friend in one's life. My personal belief that there is no treasure other than friendship in life. Everything else is transitory, and the friendships endure after we are here no more.
I owe a great deal to Captain Wilks, as I think most African American and black officers in the Coast Guard, both men and women, in that he, as a trailblazer, had laid the path and the groundwork for all of us because of his unique nature, his unique personality, led to, I think, the smoothing out of a lot of the past for many of us as we progress through our careers.
Bobby Wilks changed my life, and he changed the lives of hundreds of others in our service, and for minorities in particular. And for that, Bobby Wilks, I think rightfully, is a Coast Guard legend beyond being a Coast Guard pioneer.
I think Captain Wilks kind of paved the way for a lot of us with his professionalism and his leadership. Everybody tells you the story about you move up on the shoulders of heroes, and I think he paved the way for a number of us to move forward in the organization.
And when he was sick, when he was still able to stand up, when I visited him at the assisted living facility, and he will stand up and greet me, and if there's music playing, he will dance with me. Or sometimes I'll be visiting with him, and then we'll be watching a video or some movie, and then there'll be music. He'll stand up and dance with me. And I miss that very much.